Taysha walked up the stairs to her house with heavy steps, not wanting to go home at all. She felt hurt and kept silent. Her husband, also silent, followed her. Taysha kept thinking about the meeting with the partners, remembering how her husband had made her look bad in their eyes. "Please come to the negotiating table," the woman said in a friendly voice, inviting the two men to sit at the table. "The contract for our cooperation will be effective from today. I have prepared all the necessary documents. We just need to sign them," she smiled, and placed a stack of documents in front of each of them. "Please look at them carefully. I have tried to meet all your requirements." The two men looked at each other. "We don't quite understand," one of them began. "Why did you invite us today?" "We have nothing more to say to you. All the problems have been resolved with your husband. You were the one who referred us to him." "Of course," Taysha patiently explained. "I was hoping Boris would explain the terms to you. I thought you would find them very attractive. This contract is very important to our company, especially to me, because I have worked hard to make this deal. I don't see any obstacles to signing it. If there are any points that need to be adjusted, please suggest them. There is still time to change." Taysha turned to her husband, who had been sitting silently all this time, saying nothing and appearing unconcerned. "Why didn't you say anything? We won't sign this contract," the man said, not looking his wife in the eye, and clearly nervous. "Why not sign it?" Taysha was surprised. "Wait, we already have a preliminary agreement. You just need to confirm the details and arrange a time to sign. Is there a problem?" "I have everything prepared. There are no conflicts. The agreement is very clear. I have decided that the terms of the potential partner are not in our company's best interests. Why sign the contract if it is not feasible in the first place? Think for yourself. Why invest money in something that is not in our interests?" "Everyone," one of the men said, "please settle your own business. We do not want to get involved in your family conflicts. I think everything is clear. Sorry, but I think we should postpone the signing of this contract, perhaps for 2 days. I will prepare a new package of documents and we will start working together. Perhaps we have misunderstood each other, but in these days the misunderstanding will be cleared up." "I am afraid that will not work," one of the representatives shook his head. "We have found another partner. My advice to you," he said as he stood up, "before inviting partners, know how to negotiate with each other, otherwise the right side will not know what the left side is doing. This will adversely affect the development of the business." The two men left the conference room. "What is this?" Taysha asked angrily. "Why did you do this? Moreover, behind my back. What right do you have to refuse this deal? Why did you decide it was not profitable? We have been working on it for a month, hoping for a profitable investment. And now, all this effort has been in vain." "I don't want to talk now," Boris said, pointing to the door. "You are upset and will not listen to my explanation properly." "Okay," Taysha agreed. "Let's go home. It's really not a good idea to discuss serious matters at the end of the working day. But remember, you can't keep quiet forever. I want to know why you changed your mind about this deal." The woman stopped in front of her apartment door. Boris turned the key in the lock. Taysha changed out of her work clothes, put on her dressing gown, went into the kitchen and poured herself a glass of water. "We need to talk." Her husband's voice made her wary. "Not today," she frowned, not wanting to talk. "You've said and done enough, leaving the explanation for tomorrow. The deal is broken, so I think we can wait until tomorrow morning. And tomorrow I'll calculate how much money we've lost because of the loss of the supplier. I don't have the energy to argue anymore. I want to go to sleep." "This can't be postponed," Boris insisted. "You have to listen to me now. You want to explain why you're putting me in an awkward position in front of potential partners." Taysha narrowed her eyes at her husband. "Okay, go ahead. But don't use the excuse that I'm a woman and don't understand business. As far as I can remember, you never doubted my abilities until recently. I understand the needs of our company. You can't ignore my opinion. I'm not going to explain anything to you, and I'm not going to apologize." "I've made up my mind," Boris said. "Oh, what are you saying now? Until recently you couldn't do anything without me. What's changed? Why didn't you talk to me first? Didn't you warn me that you weren't going to sign the contract with the client? Is that so? Don't you understand that you're ruining my reputation, and thus the reputation of the company? I just didn't have time to tell you. Too many problems have piled up in the past few days. Didn't have time, or didn't want to. Now that's what you call it. How could you not discuss it with me? What is this? An act of resistance. We discussed all the details together a week before signing the contract. What happened during that time? Why do you have to explain it to me?" Boris said angrily. "I looked at the documents that the suppliers proposed and realized that they were not suitable, so I decided to refuse to cooperate with them. It's business. We'll find another supplier who is more profitable. No need to make excuses. We are partners, which means I have to know everything that's going on in the company. Thanks to you, I look like a thoughtless, impulsive person who suddenly wants to direct. And this is my initiative. When we started our business, you always consulted me. We made every decision together, weighed all the pros and cons of the deal, calculated every step so as not to make mistakes, and we succeeded together. That was important. But what do I see today? Why did you let yourself put me in such a difficult situation? Why did you change your mind behind my back? I feel like a fool because I can't convince you when you already have something in mind. The benefit from this deal is zero, and the trouble later won't be solved. You're worried about the company, not my reputation. Then you should have discussed all the details in advance, she continued. That means you don't trust me, doubt my ability. But since the company was founded, there has never been a single wrong decision from me. Why do you doubt my ability now? Taishia looked at her husband and couldn't understand why they were so distant. She remembered a conversation with her mother when they had just started planning to open a company. Mom, Boris and I have decided to start our own company. Can you imagine? It would be wonderful. Oh, good, of course, her mother replied, a hint of worry in her voice. Will you register the company in your name? Taishia's mother asked in a worried tone. Of course, Mom. He's a man, but we'll invest equally, Taishia replied. Remember, daughter, her mother looked at her as if she were addressing an ignorant child. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. If anything happens between you, the company will go to your husband, and you will be left with nothing. Mom, what could go wrong? Taishia hugged her mother. Mom, Boris and I love each other and have no intention of getting a divorce. If that's what you're implying, who knows, her mother said. Life is unpredictable. Okay, if you're so worried about me, we can be equal partners, Taishia conceded. That's better, but I still think you should have your own business, started by yourself and with your own money. Joint businesses sometimes lead to arguments because men often don't take women's decisions seriously. If they were free, they wouldn't even let us work. They would just confine us to the kitchen and the family. My Boris isn't like that, Taishia assured her mother. They're all the same. Her mother sighed heavily. You're wrong, Mother. My husband trusts me and always consults me. In some matters, I know more than he does. We have nothing to fight over. If I were you, I wouldn't be so reckless. But it's my decision, and now, Taishia understood her mother's warning, which she had not wanted to listen to. I don't want to talk about it. Her husband's voice pulled her out of her thoughts. Taishia closed her eyes, daydreaming about a hot bath, feeling like the day would never end. The pain her husband had caused her gnawed at her. She wondered what else he would reveal. So what are you going to talk about? She looked at him nervously. From tomorrow, many things in our lives will change, Boris said. Change what? Don't be so vague. I wanted to warn you so you wouldn't be surprised, Boris continued. What the hell is going on? What are you hiding? She asked impatiently. You're a smart woman, Boris began smoothly, so I'm sure you figured it all out. I've been seeing someone else, and for quite some time. Taishia was silent. I hope you won't make a fuss. We're both adults and understand that sometimes couples have to separate. I'm sure you've seen someone else, Taishia said stiffly, her heart aching. Her feminine pride was deeply wounded. She wasn't ready for this conversation, but I've tried to push the thought away. I had hoped that you would come to your senses, live happily, and stay with your family. I can understand you. It is often said that men cheat on their wives at least once in their lives. Consider this a misunderstanding that needs to be quickly forgotten. She smiled wryly, although inside she was burning. Her heart felt like it was bleeding. She wanted to stand up and slap her husband in the face. Living with you makes me feel comfortable. Boris glanced at his wife. To be honest, I have no intention of leaving. But he paused. A few months ago, Alina gave birth to a son and heir. This he could not refuse. We had dreamed of having a child for many years without success, but she did. I want to be with her and raise my son. You know how important this is to me. I hope we can part ways peacefully. Taishia closed her eyes. Her husband had hit her weakest point. I think we both agree that the subject of children is closed forever. We have been together for 10 years, and there is more to us than having children. Don't those years mean anything to you? Do you want to destroy our family because of a fleeting infatuation? Think again. Boris, we have known each other for a long time. And what about her? You still don't really know her. It's useless to bring up memories. Boris said, it's no longer important. I have made up my mind. I am a man, and if I don't have an heir, can't proudly say that the family business will be passed on to my son. Then I don't deserve it. I need this child and his mother. The feelings between us have long since faded. I need something new. So you decided to leave me and go to her, Taishia said slowly. No, Boris began pacing around the kitchen. I want you to leave. Where? She didn't understand, looking at him in confusion. What's there to not understand, he asked angrily. I have a son, an heir. We need this apartment to accommodate your new family. What do you think about living in a rented apartment? No way. Alina and her son are moving in tomorrow. Wait, Taishia felt her head spinning from her husband's brazenness. This isn't just your apartment, it's both of ours. We bought it together, we'll share it equally. You want to live with your mistress, that's fine, I won't stop you. You want a divorce? Fine, I won't stop you either, but it has to be done fairly. We have a lot of property that we bought during our marriage. By law, half of it belongs to me. I don't intend to give it to your new woman. I'm not a charity. In fact, I'm willing to give you this apartment, but you have to pay me half of its value. And of course, there is no way Alina or her child will be here tomorrow until I find a new place. Besides, I need time to pack. And what about the company? How will we divide it? Taishia. Boris looked at his wife with a hard look. You still don't understand. I don't intend to share anything with you. The company belongs to me. You're wrong, Taishia replied firmly. The business is a joint business. Any court will force you to pay me half of the value of the sale. And you can't go against me. If you don't want to share it peacefully, we'll go to court. The apartment, unfortunately, Boris continued, ignoring her words, is in both of our names, but I believe I can keep it. You don't need anything. You're alone. You have the money. What about me? Starting over. My new family can't wait. The money to support it is needed right now. So sorry, you'll have to give it up. You can't treat me like this. I'll fight to get my share of the property. Go ahead, Boris sneered, but you won't win. Accept it. I don't want you in this house, and I don't want you in my life. You're dismissed by all accounts as an asset whose use has expired. He laughed mockingly, then added, tomorrow, Alina will move in as the owner, and you won't be able to stop her. No one would dare throw a mother and her child out of the house, and I won't allow it. Okay, I'll leave, Taishia said, trying to stay calm, but I'll get my stuff later when I find a new apartment. She knew it was pointless to argue with her husband now. Taishia thought. Boris was stronger than she was and had clearly prepared for this conversation, calculating everything very carefully. So she decided to agree with him for now, just so as not to make him even angrier. I can't do it right now, Taishia said in a weak voice. You know, I need more time. You have the whole night ahead of you, Boris replied coldly. If you don't clear out all your stuff tomorrow morning, I'll throw it out to make room for Alina. I'll also change the lock so you can't get in anymore. Good night, honey. Oh, I filed for divorce. With that, Boris walked out of the kitchen. Taishia stared after her husband in shock. She wondered if this was the Boris she had loved. Tears began to roll down her cheeks. No, this is a complete stranger, she thought. It is obvious that I have never really known my husband. What should I do now, Taishia wondered, as she unconsciously drew meaningless patterns on the table with her teaspoon. First of all, I need to calm down and look at the situation clearly. She ordered herself to stop crying and firmly wiped the tears from her face. She stood up, made a cup of coffee, and when she felt hungry, she made some sandwiches to eat. After feeling calmer, Taishia decided that it would be impossible to change Boris's mind now, so she should focus on packing. She couldn't hope that Boris would change his mind in the morning. He wouldn't give up on his plan. Perhaps his new wife had completely changed his mind, to the point where he was no longer sober enough to think carefully. I have to stay calm and find a way out of this situation with the maximum benefit for myself, Taishia thought. What are my options now? While Boris is asleep, I can get the documents I need for the lawsuit. That's the most important thing. She cleared the counter, looked around the kitchen she had lovingly decorated, and then walked quickly into the hallway. She tried to control her emotions, to save them for later. Next, I have to think about what I need most in the near future. She took the suitcases down from the shelf, along with the empty boxes and plastic bags. If I have to leave here, Taishia said to herself, I'll pack as much as I can. She started in the study. Boris is a heavy sleeper, so I don't have to worry about waking him, and I still have access to the safe. She tried not to wake her husband and walked quietly into the study. Luckily, I know the combination to the safe, she thought. I hope he hasn't had time to change the lock. She quickly entered the correct numbers, and the safe opened smoothly. These documents will be very useful to me, she thought as she carefully flipped through the pages. Here are the papers for the vacation home, the apartment, and the cars. Don't think you can kick me out so easily, Boris. You Boris. You've messed with the wrong person. The fight between us has just begun, and I'm determined to leave with honor. Of course I don't intend to let you lose everything, but what is mine, I will claim it by law. She carefully folded the documents and put them in a briefcase. What else do I want to bring? She closed the safe door, looking around the room. These antiques I bought for myself, and I'm sure Boris's new wife won't be able to appreciate them. Tasia put a Sheberk coffee maker, an antique coffee grinder, and a vintage jewelry box into the bag. The rest, leave it here. She packed up some expensive china, wrapped them carefully in cloth, and wrapped up a few paintings. What should I do with all this now? She looked at the packed items with concern. Maybe I should take them to the car right away, she thought. Who knows what Boris will think when he sees what I've chosen? She smiled sadly. I just hope that reason will prevail and we don't have to split the little things like forks, spoons, or chairs, Tasia thought to herself as she carefully moved the packed items to the car, trying not to attract the attention of the neighbors. Now all that's left is to pack my things. She glanced at the clock with a cold smile, then opened the bedroom door and turned on the light. What are you doing? Boris, who had been sleeping, woke up with a start and sat up in bed, rubbing his eyes and looking at the clock. Are you crazy? It's already 3 a.m. Why did you turn on the light? What do you want here? I have to go to work tomorrow morning. I have to go to work too. And I'm just doing what you asked me to do, Tasia replied calmly. She threw open the wardrobe door and started taking out 2 large suitcases that were on the floor. I made it clear that if you didn't pack your things by tomorrow morning, you would throw them away. I can't let you lose your favorite dresses and outfits. Sorry, but you didn't give me any more time. Can't you wait until morning? Boris said irritably. Then lay back down on the bed and pulled the covers up. You won't be able to sleep, and tomorrow will be a difficult day. You better get used to it, because you're going to have a lot of sleepless nights, Tasia scoffed. I don't forget that a little kid is moving in with you. You can't imagine the difficulties you'll face. And I can't wait because your new wife might want to move in sooner. Okay, but can you pack faster? Boris asked, annoyed, as Tasia slowly packed her things into her suitcase. Don't rush me. I don't want to forget anything, she smiled sarcastically. After 10 years of happy marriage, I've accumulated quite a lot. Remember how much love you've given me for jewelry and clothes. When everything was finally packed, Tasia took the suitcases out to the car. Maybe I should get some rest, she thought, looking at her watch. Even an hour's sleep will clear my head. She lay down on the sofa in the living room and tried to doze off, but thoughts of the tense conversation with her husband and packing up kept her awake. In a half-asleep state, she waited until morning. When dawn broke, she jumped up, straightened her clothes, and quickly drove to the company, hoping to get the important documents before the workday began. As usual, Tasia greeted the security guard at the gate with a smile. Good morning, Kolya. I came early today to start work. Did you eat something strange? Kolya asked, surprised to block the entrance. Let me in, Kolya, Tasia said in a surprised voice. Excuse me, Tasia Vladimirovna. The guard lowered his head to avoid her eyes. I can't. Boris Viktorovich has forbidden me to let you into the office. I like you very much, but he has threatened to fire me. I can't lose my job. My mother, wife, and children are all dependent on me. If I lose my job, we will be in dire straits. Please understand. Kolya, I understand. Tasia patted him on the shoulder. Don't worry. I'm very sad, but I won't make things difficult for you. Thank you, Tasia Vladimirovna, Kolya said, his face red. I'm sorry. Never mind, Tasia tried to smile, even though she wanted to cry. This is a family matter. I should apologize to you for putting you in this awkward situation. I don't blame you. Boris isn't stupid, she thought as she walked out of the building. He planned it all along to keep me from going into his office and getting the documents. I can't argue with Kolya. He's just following orders. Arguing would only give Boris a reason to call the police. I'd better come back later when things have calmed down a bit and talk to Kolya. He's a nice guy. He'll understand. Maybe I should come later in the day when no one's watching. There are no security cameras, so maybe I can convince him. With that in mind, Tasia got into her car. I need to find a lawyer. I can't handle it alone, she said as she flipped through her phone contacts. If I remember correctly, this guy is considered the best in civil cases. I heard he has never lost a case. However, his fees won't be cheap. She looked around, then started the car. Luckily, Boris doesn't have access to my account. I'll pay anything to settle this property issue. Come on, let's try calling, she said to herself, then dialed the number of the lawyer's office. "Good morning," she began when she heard a pleasant female voice on the other end of the line. "I need to see your boss right away. When can he see me?" There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. "Actually, he just got a free slot in his schedule. You can come right now." "Excellent," Tasia replied happily. "I'm on my way." As Tasia entered Alexander Yurievich's waiting room, the secretary said, "You're in luck. His previous appointment was canceled, and he will see you now." She quickly stood up and opened the door to Tasia's office. "Excuse me, I'll be ready to hear you in a minute." "There's a lot of work," he said. Tasia sat down in a comfortable chair, placed her bag on the chair next to her, and folded her arms on the elegant dark wood desk. She looked around and saw that his office was elegant French. The files, lists, and office supplies were arranged in a logical manner, perfectly suited to the space and reflecting the owner's style. "Please, I'm ready to hear you." He finally raised his head, looking into Tasia's eyes. "My case may seem trivial at first glance," Tasia began, a little nervous, but she mustered all her mental strength to tell her story. "We've been together for 10 years, starting everything from scratch. The only thing that made our family life so breathless was the lack of children. But then, some young girl seduced my husband, and now he's kicking me out of the house. You want to get yourself back." The man looked at her softly. "No, I don't want to," Tasia replied. "We are civilized people. We parted peacefully, without breaking things or insulting each other. If he thinks life with his new wife will be better, then let him go. I have no intention of getting in his way." "That's very noble," the lawyer chuckled, "and surprising to hear from a woman. I see. You want revenge, to punish him, to leave him with nothing." He continued, "No, I don't want to take my husband back, nor do I want to take everything from him. I just want to get back what's mine, according to the law." Tasia placed a file on the table. "We bought all the property after we got married, which means half of it is mine, right? Here are the documents. You can look through them. I'm not asking for anything more, just what I'm entitled to when we get divorced. By the way, my husband filed for divorce without my consent." Alexander Yurievich was silent for a long time, watching Tasia intently. Feeling uncomfortable under his gaze, she finally asked, "What's the matter?" Tasia thought, seeing the lawyer's scrutinizing gaze. "Why is he so silent? Is there something wrong?" Finally, she couldn't stand the silence any longer and asked, "Are you taking my case?" "Excuse me," Alexander Yurievich chuckled and began to examine the documents in front of him. After a while, he looked at her intently again, which made Tasia feel embarrassed. "If you have any questions, just ask me. I have nothing to hide. I don't want to cause trouble. Although it hurts me that my husband treated me like this, I don't want to harm him. Maybe he's right. Our relationship is over. We live together only out of habit, out of each other's presence. If you understand what I'm saying. Maybe he was the first to realize the meaninglessness of our relationship, and in a way I feel grateful to him. It's just that this separation came so suddenly." "To tell the truth," Alexander Yurievich said slowly, continuing to observe her, "I expected to meet a young, beautiful, and rather foolish woman, eager to rob her unfaithful husband of his fortune. But you are completely different, and that surprised me." "What do you mean?" Tasia frowned. "Stop looking at me like that. Will you take my case? If you want to know the details, just ask me, and I will answer all your questions." "No, I have no further questions," he replied. "It's also obvious. Actually, I have more questions for your husband. For example, why did he lose a woman like you?" Tasia blushed and turned away. "I have absolutely no idea what he's up to. This apartment was bought after we got married, and it's jointly owned. I've checked the documents, and everything is clear. Same with the company. We'll have to split it. I don't understand how he thinks he'll win this." "Excuse me, Tasia. Can I ask you something personal?" he continued. "Okay, go ahead," she nodded. "As for the money, how do you plan to divide it?" "You haven't said anything about that. We never had a joint budget, so my money is still mine. The car is registered in my name. I have no claim on Boris's car. What I care about is the apartment, the company, and the vacation home. To be frank, this case is easy to win. I would be happy if you decided to work with me. But a simple case like this can be handled by any lawyer, even those who charge much less than me. I'm sure you've read up on my fees. Maybe you should find another law firm. I don't give discounts to my clients, even nice ones like you." "Alexander, my husband is not a fool," Tasia began, ignoring his compliment. "I tried to get into the office this morning, but I was stopped. He told the security guard not to let me in, not even to talk to me, under threat of being fired. I could have asked for access, but first of all, I didn't want to put the security guards in an awkward position, and secondly, Boris was just waiting for a reason to take action against me. I was sure he had a plan. I was afraid that he would forge documents related to the company. Maybe he had me sign some papers without my noticing. Didn't you check the documents before you signed them? I had no reason not to trust him before. We've worked together for a long time and we have families and we have a joint business. We both have a stake in its success. At least we used it to. Tasia paused, trying to hold back tears. I can't confirm my suspicions because I don't have access to the office right now. This seems simple, but it could turn into a fierce battle. I don't want that. I am a compromiser, but I am afraid that I will weaken and give up. Boris will definitely take advantage of that and put pressure on me, but I want to get justice and get what I deserve in this divorce. From what I read, you have won the most difficult cases. If I had to start a war with my husband, only you could help me. That's why I came to you. As for the fee, don't worry, I can afford it. Name a price and we'll sign a contract. Tasia, as I understand it, your husband asked you to leave the apartment and you packed your things in the car, right? Alexander asked. Yes, I packed my things in the car, she replied. So where are you going to live? Have you found a place to live? Or did someone in your family or friends let you stay? I haven't really thought about it, Tasia said, confused. But that's okay, I'll try to go home. Maybe Boris has changed his mind and won't kick me out of my apartment. At least he has some conscience. If he insists, he'll probably carry out his threat and change the locks. If he does, I won't be able to get back in. Besides, going back in is a bad idea. The apartment already has new occupants. I don't want to argue with them in front of the neighbors. I'll probably have to find a temporary place to stay, but never mind. I'll figure something out. Don't you want to call the police? They'll force him to let you in. No, I don't want to go home with the police and ask them to let me into my apartment. That's too low. It's easier for me to rent a new place. It's not a problem if I have the money. In that case, Alexander said, placing a form and pen in front of Tasia, will write a request for the court to divide the property, then sign a partnership agreement between you and me. I won't hesitate and will start studying your documents right away. Tasia began filling out the papers. I also want everything to be resolved quickly, she said as he collected the completed papers. Alexander made up his mind and handed her a bunch of keys. Here, this is for you, he said. What is this? Tasia asked, looking confused. This is my second apartment key. Usually my friends, colleagues, or close customers stay there. Right now the apartment is empty. You can stay there temporarily. I'll write down the address for you. No, I can't accept it, Tasia protested. I don't want to bother you, nor do I want to owe you a favor. Don't refuse, Alexander stopped her. You'll have a hard time. At least let one of your problems be solved easily. I don't really need the apartment yet. You can stay there as long as you like, until you find a new place, but I don't feel comfortable. Tasia tried to refuse. I'm used to taking care of myself. We're partners, and it's my responsibility to help you, Alexander said. You look tired and need rest. You'll find a new apartment, but that will take time. Now go there, shower, rest, and get your mind right. There's no food there, but you can order something. There's wine in the bar. And if you need something stronger, cognac, please make yourself at home. I really don't want to bother you. I'm used to taking care of myself. Tasia felt tears welling up in her eyes. A stranger was showing her concern, while her husband of nearly 10 years had kicked her out of the house like a homeless dog. Stop apologizing and go. The lawyer quickly wrote the address on a piece of paper and handed it to her. I'll call you as soon as I file the paperwork. To make it easier for you to accept my help, remember that you're paying me. This apartment is part of the deal, a bonus for choosing me as your lawyer. Do you agree to this condition? Thank you, you're so nice to me. I can't even remember the last time someone was so nice to me, she said, her voice choking. I like to defend the weak, even when it's not in my best interests, Alexander said with a small smile, his eyes sly. Tasia smiled back, but tears were still glistening in her eyes. Just go and don't worry about anything. The truth is on your side. Gather your strength, because you'll need a lot of it to endure this lawsuit. This is an uncomfortable and sometimes painful process. I have seen it many times, so I know what I am talking about. You need to face your husband as a strong, beautiful, confident woman. Don't let it show that this situation has broken you. Yes, I understand. I shouldn't be weak, Tasia said, and thanked him again before leaving the office. She walked out of the office and got into her car, feeling completely exhausted. No relaxing, she told herself. I'll drive to the apartment the lawyer kindly lent me. I'll rest there. He's right. I really need some rest right now. About half an hour later, Tasia entered her new apartment. "I can't believe this is my apartment," she whispered as she took in the luxurious interior. She went into the bedroom, then the kitchen. "I'll order takeout. While I wait, I'll take a shower to wash away all my worries and stress." She called in her order and was pleased to hear that it would be delivered within half an hour. Then she stepped into the bathroom. The hot water and soapy foam relaxed her so much that she almost fell asleep. Just then the doorbell rang. Oh my God! She jumped up, quickly dried herself, wrapped her hair in a towel and put on a robe, then ran to open the door. "Hello," a young man in a delivery uniform smiled at her. "Here's your order, thank you," Tasia replied and took the bags. After seeing the young man off, she walked into the kitchen. "I'm hungry," she thought as she began to eat the salad and meat. "This meat is so tender." After finishing her meal, she stood up and walked into the bedroom. "This is what I've been missing," she said contentedly as she lay down on the bed. Before she could close her eyes, fatigue and tension took over, and she quickly fell asleep. Tasia didn't know how long she slept, but when she opened her eyes, it was already dark. "Oh, this is so comfortable," she said as she stretched. "I could lie here forever without worrying about anything. But, oh, it's already dark. I slept all night." She jumped up and decided that she needed to go home to see what was going on. "Maybe I'm overthinking it. Maybe Boris has changed his mind and doesn't want to kick me out anymore. If he wants to apologize, I don't blame him. After all, we've had so many memories together." She quickly dressed herself, drove home and parked in front of the building. Looking up, she saw the lights on in the apartment windows. She walked up the stairs and, as usual, tried to insert the key into the lock, but it didn't work. So he really changed the locks. Tasia felt a pang in her heart. She took a deep breath and rang the bell. She stood still, listening, but no one answered. That's strange. The lights on means someone must be home. She knocked softly at first, then more firmly, but still there was no response. She rang the bell several times until the door suddenly opened, and before her stood a young woman with shoulder-length blonde hair, brightly painted lips, and unnaturally long eyelashes framing her brown eyes. Her makeup marred the natural beauty of her face. She wore a thin silk robe, barely covering her slender legs. "What do you need?" The stranger's voice was rough, despite her frail appearance. "Don't you know that if someone doesn't open the door, it means they don't want to see anyone? And you keep ringing the bell and waking my son up. Who are you?" "Hello, I want to see Boris. Can you call him out?" Tasia tried to stay calm and polite. "Oh, so you're Boris's ex-wife. He's not here, and I don't know when he'll be back." Aline, the stranger, replied sarcastically and tried to close the door. "And actually, I don't think he wants to talk to you. As far as I know, you two have worked things out. I'll wait for him. I need to talk to him. You can't stop me." Tasia held the door open. "Let me into the apartment. In case you didn't know, half of this apartment is mine. I have every right to be here. You have no business here." Aline pulled the door back toward her. "Boris said you're not getting anything from this apartment anymore. This is my home now, and I decide who comes in." "Okay, I'm sorry for making things worse." Tasia tried to calm her voice. "Just tell me when Boris is coming back, and I'll leave." "I don't know when Boris is coming back, and I don't think you want to sit here all night. Go before you wake my baby. If you don't want to leave, I'll tell Boris, and he'll deal with you. Don't expect to make me feel better. I know my rights." "You're screaming like the victim here," Tasia said calmly, "so don't blame me. If you keep this up, all the neighbors will come to watch us fight. You don't want that, do you?" "I don't care about the neighbors," Aline replied rudely. "Go away. I don't have time to talk to you. My husband is coming home soon and I need to get ready. He's really fierce in bed." Aline chuckled. "What do you know about that?" Between the two of them, the passion had long since passed. Boris had complained that she had not satisfied him. "We don't need to discuss our sex life." Tasia blushed. "I'll leave, but before I do, please satisfy a little feminine curiosity." She looked at her opponent suspiciously. "Don't worry, I have no intention of hindering your happiness. Just answer one question." "Okay," Aline said, annoyed. "You won't leave me alone anyway." "How old is your son?" Tasia asked. 8 months, Aline replied suspiciously. "But what does that have to do with you? What are you planning? Don't expect to be able to do anything. Boris will stay with me. Forget him. You have no chance against me. I'm young and beautiful, and you're just an old thing." "Of course I understand," Tasia replied. "Rest assured I have no intention of destroying Boris's new family happiness. Just one more question. Why did you and Boris decide to get married now, and not right after your son was born? Why wait 8 months? What were you waiting for? Don't you understand? I love Boris, so I don't want to force him. He can't decide to talk to you. You can't imagine how I waited. But why rush? I'm not cruel. I gave him time to make arrangements. I knew he would marry me anyway, sooner or later. Look in the mirror and you'll understand why Boris chose me. You pushed him a little, didn't you? You threatened to leave and forbid him from seeing his son if he didn't leave me, didn't you? Me, Tasia asked, with a hint of sarcasm in her voice. Nothing like that, Aline replied. Yes, I gave him an ultimatum: either I move into his apartment this week, or I go back to my mother's. I've had enough of the rented apartment. But my son will never see his father again. I have no choice. I need certainty. And I'm also afraid that he will panic and change his mind about divorcing you. After all, after 10 years, people easily get attached to each other, and your tricks worked immediately. He was in a hurry and gave in to you, Tasia said with a slight smile. You see, you understand everything. Aline sneered. You asked more than 2 questions. I don't have time to sit here and talk to you. Go away if you don't want to get into trouble. Boris won't be happy when he finds out you're here. Why are you so nervous? Tasia let go of the door and walked towards the elevator. Before leaving, she turned back and said, It seems like you're not very sure about your tomorrow. You see, there's a saying, once betrayed, betrayed again. If I were you, I would think carefully. One day, Boris will see not only your body but also your soul. I'm sure he won't like what he sees. Don't scare me. The one who's scared is not afraid anymore, Aline shouted behind Taisia. Forget this path. Boris is now my husband, and only mine. You blame yourself for not being able to give birth to his children, so don't blame anyone else. If you had children, he would never look at another woman. But you can't. So now make way for someone else. Rich men aren't always available, but I'll keep Boris. Don't worry about that. The conversation was interrupted by the ringing of the phone. Tasia, hello. She heard Alexander's voice on the phone. I filed the documents with the court, and the first hearing will be next week. Thank you, Tasia said, her voice hoarse with emotion. The summons has been sent to Boris. Be ready for any contingencies and even provocations. What are you laughing at? Taisia asked. Boris is not like that. He won't do anything despicable. I wouldn't be so sure about that, Alexander replied. He betrayed you. A person threatened with losing his fortune will do anything to keep it. He had a reason to fight. And I think it was his lover who set these harsh conditions. I talked to her, Tasia admitted. Why did you do that? Alexander asked, clearly worried. You could have upset Boris and made the division of assets more complicated. I hadn't thought about it, Taisia admitted. But he didn't call me to reprimand me. Maybe Aline didn't tell me about my visit. We'll see. But don't get carried away, Alexander reminded her. Time passed quickly, and the first day of the trial arrived. Tasia arrived at the courthouse nervous. Don't worry, Alexander reassured her, taking her hand. There's nothing to worry about. The court will hear the parties and make a decision. I don't understand why Boris isn't here, Tasia said, looking worried. We have a few minutes left, Alexander replied. Please stand up. The court is starting, the clerk announced as the judge entered the courtroom. The trial is adjourned due to the defendant's absence, the judge announced. What does that mean? Tasia asked Alexander, looking confused. That means your husband is trying to drag out the process, but it doesn't matter. He can't escape. Whether he likes it or not, he still has to divide the property. It just takes more time. And what should I do? Tasia asked, looking at Alexander with disappointment. You just have to wait. You have a place to live. You don't lack money, so take a break. As they say, there's no bad without good. When will you have a chance to not worry about work? Do you remember the last time you went on vacation? We were just planning to go somewhere with Boris. Tasia smiled sadly. We usually go on vacation together every year. Great, Alexander said with an encouraging smile. Go somewhere for a change of pace. It will do you good, at least for a few days. I just want this to end as soon as possible. I feel very uncomfortable continuing to use your hospitality. He gave me temporary accommodation, but this case is dragging on too long. Tasia, don't worry about it. Don't you think that if I were in your situation, you would help me too? You're not just a client to me, you've become a real friend, Alexander said, looking straight into her eyes. Tasia felt embarrassed and looked away. But don't worry about anything. We have everything under control. Have you decided where to go? Yes, I'm going to a friend's house, she replied. Great. Just relax and don't think about anything. Remember, I'm the one who's taking care of your problems now, Alexander said. Tasia went out of town that weekend and the time passed quickly. She really felt ready to continue fighting for her rights. Even from a distance, she could feel Alexander's support. A week later, she walked into the courtroom again. Boris is here, Alexander said, and he seems to be in a good mood. Hopefully today's hearing will resolve everything. Boris entered the courtroom with his lawyer, and the judge took his seat. Let the hearing begin, the clerk announced. Today we will consider a civil case regarding the division of the couple's property, said the judge. Lawyer for the plaintiff, please present your request. Tasha's lawyer presented the requests. Boris Viktorovich, said the judge, we would like to hear why you disagree with the plaintiff's position. According to the documents, the property was acquired during the marriage, so each party has the right to claim half. There are no factors that influence the refusal of this request. The documents are completed in accordance with the regulations. I do not understand why there is a difficulty, Your Honor. And Boris stood up and cleared his throat. According to the law, my wife may have the right to claim the apartment and the vacation home in half, but she is alone, while I have a family. I have a son to inherit. I hope that the court will consider this. Why does Tasha need the apartment? Who will she leave it to? A stranger or her lover? I do not want the property we have built together to fall into the hands of a hanger-on. I assume that Tasha will probably have another man, and he will not give up getting his hands on her property. I will use my share of the property properly to ensure that she does not fall prey to bad people. Boris Viktorovich, the court is not interested in your family affairs. We must obey the law. According to the law, you must either transfer the property to Tasha Vladimirovna or pay financial compensation, said the judge. You don't understand me, Boris became impatient. Why should I give anything to my ex-wife? She has enough money to buy the apartment she wanted. It's not my fault that she couldn't give me children. Do you know how it feels for a man to not have an heir? I waited 10 years to hold my son in my arms, and now it's happened. In fact, she must compensate me for all those wasted years. I'm the one who's at a disadvantage here. What is he talking about? Tasha whispered as Boris spoke emotionally. She was silent, only occasionally shivering at the sound of her ex-husband's loud voice, her hand fiddling with the strap of her leather bag. Alexander gently took her hand, squeezing her cold fingers. Be patient. I'm sure this isn't the worst thing we'll hear today. Boris Viktorovich, the judge interrupted. Your arguments are purely emotional. The court needs the facts, and the facts show that the plaintiff's request is reasonable. You can sit down. As for the apartment and the vacation home, everything is clear. Then she turned to Tasha's lawyer. In the application, it is mentioned that the plaintiff and the defendant have a joint business. That's right, Alexander stood up. This business was established by the couple right after they got married. As soon as the defendant filed for divorce, he prevented his ex-wife from entering the office, causing her to lose access to her business, which meant losing her source of income. I asked the defendant to explain the reasons for this. Your Honor, Boris's lawyer said. Perhaps my colleague, he nodded toward Alexander, does not have the correct information. Tasha Vladimirovna's shares were transferred to Boris by agreement. Your Honor, Boris's lawyer said, placing the documents before the judge, it is clearly stated here that the current co-owner of the company is Mikhail Grigorovich Suvorov. Tasha Vladimirovna has nothing to do with this company, since she is my client's ex-wife. Therefore, it is perfectly legal to ban her from the office, since this is the defendant's private property. This cannot be. Tasha jumped up from her seat. I did not sign any papers. She looked at her husband in bewilderment. Did you forge my signature? What did you do with my signature, my dear? Boris replied sarcastically, I never did that. In fact, she signed the papers herself, renouncing her ownership. I, as administrator, appointed Mikhail as co-owner in her place. Any signature verification will confirm the legitimacy of these documents. I apologize if you have forgotten that you resigned. It is not my problem anymore. You are a scoundrel, Tasha said in a rage. You tricked me into signing the papers. I could not have signed them willingly. You lied. Judge Boris said in an agitated voice, she insulted me. I want it recorded. I want her punished for insulting me in front of witnesses. Now do you understand why I left her? She always blames me for everything. Sit down, the judge ordered, her eyes forcing Boris to sit still. She turned to Tasha and said in a warning tone, I will only give you this warning. A warning? Boris jumped up again. And she can humiliate me in front of others and only get a warning. I will sue. I will not let this go. I know my rights. I am warning you, the judge said sternly. If you do not stop, I will have you removed from the courtroom. She turned to Tasha's lawyer, Alexander Yurievich. Do you have any comments on this? Your Honor. Alexander rose. My client asserts that she did not sign these documents. I have no reason to disbelieve her. Therefore, I request a signature examination. Tasia Vladimirovna suspects that her signature was fraudulently obtained. The judge, though not allowed to show favoritism, had the impression that she looked at her with some sympathy. Can you explain more about this dispute? The judge asked. Your Honor, Tasia said, looking embarrassed, I cannot sign these documents voluntarily. Starting the joint company was my idea, and we have been developing it together for all these years. This is my only source of income. Voluntarily giving up my share would be like cutting off my right hand. Do you ever plan to hand over the company to your husband? The judge asked. Tasia recalled a few months ago when Boris had convinced her to transfer the papers to him. We talked about it once, but I refused because I found it strange that he was so insistent. I didn't expect him to take advantage of my trust. He probably intended to remove me from the job all along, just waiting for the right moment. Then the judge said, looking around the courtroom, the hearing is adjourned. The plaintiff's request for a signature verification is granted. She banged her gavel to end the hearing, and everyone filed out of the room. You won't prove anything, Boris smiled wickedly. You may win the apartment and the motel, but you'll never get your company back. As for the damages, don't expect them anytime soon. I'll extend the payment to the maximum. So you can be such a scoundrel. It's a pity I realized it too late, Tasia replied, her voice full of contempt. Don't be discouraged, Alexander tried to comfort her. We still have a fighting chance. No, Sasha. Tasia felt completely exhausted. Nothing happened. It's very possible that Boris tricked me into signing the documents he needed from the pile of papers I had to sign recently. I blame myself for not looking carefully. I always trusted him as much as I trusted myself. Now I'm paying the price for that. We won't be able to prove that I signed by mistake. The signature is mine, and I'm sure he wouldn't have acted so arrogantly if he hadn't been so sure of it. Who is Mikhail? Alexander asked. Where did he come from? He's Boris's friend. Didn't he suspect anything when I transferred my share to him? Tasia replied. We don't know how Boris explained my decision to him. He probably doesn't even know that he's an unwitting accomplice in our dispute. I saw another Boris today, and this one can do anything bad. As they walked to their car, Alexander asked, Tasia, how about stopping by a cafe for a cup of coffee and discussing our next steps? I agree, Tasia replied cheerfully. To be honest, I don't want to be alone right now. Your support is very important to me. They stopped at a cafe, sat down at a table, and ordered coffee. Sasha, Tasia said, maybe we should forget about this company. I don't want to continue arguing. I'm too tired. Boris will pay back the money for the apartment and the motel, so I won't have to worry about being kicked out. I don't want to see him again. I want to forget about my old life and start over. As for business, I can start a new company. I was never a parasite. We were equal partners, and I have a lot of ideas in my head. I have the strength to start over, and I don't need anything more. Alexander looked at her admiringly. Tasia, why don't we call each other you and me? He suggested. I don't mind, Tasia smiled. They clinked their coffee cups to celebrate the change in their relationship. After finishing their coffee, they went outside and sat down on a bench. To be honest, I've been meaning to ask you to drop this lawsuit for a long time. But you know, for your happiness, I'm ready to do anything. And if necessary, we'll continue to fight to the end. Although I understand that the chances of achieving justice are slim. Unfortunately, we don't have witnesses willing to confirm that Boris deliberately wanted to take the company from you. He certainly wouldn't discuss his plans with anyone except his press, and she would never betray him. Who would want to cut off the branch I'm sitting on? But I have no intention of giving up. Your husband has crossed the line. You see, there are situations where I have to speak up. It's not just about business. Alexander hesitated. I've been hesitant to tell you for a long time, but I can't keep quiet any longer. You'll find out for yourself one day, but it's better for me to tell you now. Maybe the shock won't be too great. What else? Taisia asked worriedly. I thought there was nothing worse than losing a thriving business. What else could go wrong? Have you noticed anything unusual around you lately? Has anyone been treating you differently? Maybe asking strange questions? Alexander asked. No, I haven't noticed anything, Tasia said, looking puzzled. Tasia tried to recall recent events and then it clicked. That's right, she said. I noticed my friends seemed to be avoiding me, like I was contagious, or like I'd borrowed money from them and didn't want to pay it back. But I don't owe anyone money, so maybe I'm the one being shunned. Do you know anything about this? She asked, looking at Alexander worriedly. Has my ex-husband been spreading dirty rumors about me? Alexander paused, considering his words. Yes, that's true, he finally admitted. Boris has spread nasty rumors about you, but in my life, there's nothing worth being ashamed of. Tasia was astonished. Why did he do that? He knows best what I've been through. I've never been anywhere, I've never seen any doctors, and they were all useless. But I was always loyal to him. Tears began to fall from her eyes. Tasia turned to face Alexander, put her hands on his head, and looked straight into his eyes for a long time. Then, unexpectedly, she kissed him passionately. Taya Alexander looked at her in confusion. I would be happy, but he didn't understand her actions. Thank you, she said with a smile as she let him go. You just opened my eyes. I never thought I would use such a powerful weapon in the confrontation with Boris, but now I have no doubt. I will fight with his own methods. What are you thinking? Is it dangerous? Is there anything I can do to help? Alexander asked. Tomorrow I will meet Boris and finish this whole story, Tasia said firmly. And then we will start a new page, our page. I don't understand much, but I like your determination. Alexander took her hand. Are you serious about starting over? Yes, Tasia replied firmly. You have become a very important person to me, and you are the only one who supported me during this difficult time, the only one I can trust right now. Then maybe we should go to my house, Alexander said, his eyes sparkling with passion. Not this time, Tasia smiled apologetically. I need to prepare for the meeting with Boris. I think it will be very painful for him. With that, she stood up and asked Alexander to take her to the car. Today was tough. I need to calm down and be alone for a while. Then they each got into their cars and Tasia returned to her apartment. She found a file in her belongings, sat down on the sofa in the living room, and started flipping through the papers. After a while, she decided to put the file in her bag and call Boris. Boris, we need to meet tomorrow, she said. What else do you need from me? He replied in a rough voice. Do you expect me to give you back the company? Don't expect that. It belongs to me alone. We have nothing more to talk about. I have another life and want to forget you forever. Calm down, Tasia replied. I have no intention of suing you anymore. Then let's not meet. I don't want to waste time on meaningless talk. You are no longer anyone to me. And really, have you ever thought that I simply don't want to see you? Enough with the court meetings. Trust me, this is more important to you, Taisia insisted. Come to the place where we met. I'll wait for you. Trust me, I won't bother you unless it's something serious. Okay, Boris replied reluctantly. I'll see what you want to distract me from my work. But remember, I know you like the back of my hand. You can't make me move. I have no intention of convincing you of anything. We just need to talk. I repeat, this is for your own good. I won't keep you long. Don't worry, she said, hanging up and going into the bathroom, where she stood under the hot water to wash away all the stress of the day. Closing her eyes, she quickly fell asleep. The next day, Tasia sat on a bench in the small park, under a large lilac bush, waiting for Boris. This was their old meeting place. From afar, she saw him coming and raised his hand to greet him. What's the matter? Boris asked as he stopped in front of her. What did you choose this place for? Are you trying to bring up old memories to soften me? Don't try in vain, it won't help. No, Tasia shook her head. You're thinking too much about yourself. We chose this place because there are few people around, no one will bother us, and we can talk freely. You're wasting your time, Boris replied contemptuously. The past means nothing to me. I am truly happy now with the woman I love and the son I have dreamed of for so many years. You should understand that you have no chance of making a deal with me. For the sake of my son's future, I am willing to do anything, even fake it. But you will not be able to prove anything. It is a pity that you behave like such a selfish and self-satisfied person, Tasia said in a calm voice. Greed and hatred have blinded you. You have forgotten that I am not at all like the image of the woman you created in your mind. But I am not here to stir your conscience. I know it has long been forgotten in your happy family life. However, I am here to give you this. She handed him a document. What is this? Boris asked suspiciously. Do you remember about 5 years ago when we went to a clinic about your infertility? Yes, we did the tests together, Boris replied. It was necessary to determine who had the problem. I remember it very well. The doctor said that it was because of me that we couldn't have children. We tried treatment, but it didn't work. I remember it very well. But what does that have to do with now? I gathered all that paperwork for you, Tasia said calmly, placing the folder on the chair beside her. It's all written there. I just love you too much. The problem isn't me, it's you. You're the one who can't have children. You're sterile. Are you kidding? Boris exclaimed, his voice dripping with disbelief. That's impossible. The doctors said you couldn't have children and there was nothing they could do to help. They said that because I asked them to Tisha's side, I didn't want you to feel guilty or have your pride hurt. I was willing to take responsibility for my own safety. At the time, I thought the sacrifice was worth it. No, I don't believe you, Boris stammered. I have a son. If I'm sterile, whose son does he belong to? That's a question I think you should ask your new wife, Tisha shrugged. Here are the documents. You can review them later. I have no reason to lie to you. If you want, go to the clinic we went to. The medical records are still there. That's all I wanted to tell you. See, you worried for nothing. Our meeting didn't last as long as you thought. She stood up and slowly walked down the path in the park, leaving Boris standing there, his eyes fixed on the documents. I don't believe it. It can't be, he muttered in shock. She gave me these papers on purpose, Boris told himself, trying to convince himself that Tisha was just jealous of his current happiness. My son, Romochka, no one can take him away from me. No one can make me doubt Aline, my wife. He took the documents with trembling hands, sat down on a chair and opened them. No, it can't be, Boris muttered in despair as he flipped through the medical documents. It's not true. Why has she been silent all these years? So it's my fault. I'm the one who made us childless. I'm the one who's infertile. Is this possible? He groaned in helpless anger, throwing the documents to the ground, sending the papers flying. He held his head, rocking back and forth, repeating, no way, no way. I don't believe it. Why did she take all the blame on me? Why? And I'm the fool who blamed her all my life. God, I'm the fool. Boris didn't know how long he sat there, but when he came to, he carefully gathered up the papers and stuffed them back into the folder. He stood up and started walking slowly toward his car. A feeling of nausea and confusion overtook him. He got into his car, started the engine, and drove aimlessly around the city. Finally, his eyes fell on a bar sign. He stopped the car, walked into the bar, and called out, vodka, 200 ml. He sat down at the table, exhausted. Can I help you? The young waiter asked as he placed a glass of vodka in front of Boris, his eyes full of sympathy. No, no one can help me. Boris shook his head. He downed the vodka. Do you understand? I just found out that I can't have children. I understand, the young man replied, but Boris interrupted angrily. What do you understand? I'm not a man anymore. My life is over. Pour me some more. He pushed the glass toward the young man. You're not the only one, the young man said, trying to comfort him. The important thing is to have a loving wife. As for children, you can adopt. There are many children in orphanages who need families. It's not difficult. I don't want someone else's child, Boris interrupted. I always dreamed of having my own child, and I blamed my wife for not being able to give me one. But in fact, she hid the fact that I was infertile. Do you understand? Everyone criticized her, but she took the blame to protect my pride. As for me, I betrayed her. Do you understand? I betrayed her just because I was happy with the thought of becoming a father. She is such a noble woman, the young waiter said as he poured Boris more wine. Noble? What is she noble for? Boris drained his vodka again. You have no idea what I feel. Here he tapped his chest with his fist. I am completely crushed. He put both hands on the bridge of his nose, then slammed his fist down on the table, causing the glass to jump and make a weak clang. Calm down, the waiter said anxiously, taking the glass back from Boris. It's not a death sentence. You can live with it. But for me, it's like I'm dead, Boris said, his eyes red with alcohol. Because at home, I have a new wife and a son waiting for me. Your diagnosis was wrong, the young man asked. No, it was right, Boris replied, but the mistake is waiting for me at home, and I have to fix it. Boris put the money on the table and staggered out of the bar. He staggered to his apartment, ringing the doorbell. Are you crazy? Aline cried angrily as she opened the door. You know Romochka is asleep. Where are your keys? Are you drunk? You are a scoundrel. Why did you drink? Why did you come to my house in this state? Yes, I am drunk, Boris said, pushing her aside and entering the hall. My God, will my son see me like this? But he cannot be my son. How dare you say that? Aline was indignant. What is wrong with you? Go to bed. We will talk tomorrow. No, I am not, Boris said, pushing her against the wall. You lied to me. You brought someone else's child to me to raise. Confess. I will know the truth, and when I do, I will not forgive you. You hurt me, Aline screamed as she struggled to free herself from his grip. I don't understand what you are implying. How can you doubt me? This is your son. You know how much I love you. I don't need anyone else but you. I don't believe you, Boris said, entering the living room without taking off his coat. "Why are you tormenting me?" Aline burst into tears. "If I did something wrong, tell me, but don't doubt me like that. I never betrayed you. I didn't need to." "I believe it," Boris agreed abruptly, "because you were afraid that I would throw you out with your bastard child. You had it all figured out. You trapped me, and I was a fool to fall for it." "You're crazy," Aline shouted. "I don't want to hear another word." She started to walk away, but Boris grabbed her arm and pulled her back. "You're not going anywhere until you tell me whose child this is. At least I have a right to know who the father is." "It's your child," Aline cried out in despair, "the fruit of our love. Don't you remember how happy I was when I told you I was pregnant? You were ready to take me in your arms, and now you are accusing me of something absurd. I don't understand why." "I understand," said Aline, suddenly calm and soft-spoken. "You are angry about the divorce and the division of property. You are stressed. I am even ready to forgive you for drinking. Calm down, we will talk tomorrow." From the nursery, the baby's cry rang out. "See, your son is awake." "No, he is not my son. Don't you dare call him mine," Boris roared. "He cannot be mine. I am sterile, completely sterile." "What?" Aline asked, confused. "You said that Tasia had health problems, and you are completely healthy." "Yes, that's what I thought," Boris said, his voice full of bitterness. "But it turns out that I was at fault for not having children. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe the doctors could have made a mistake too. Or maybe your ex-wife wanted to get back at you for betraying her." "There was no mistake," Boris said wearily, handing her the documents. "Look, here are the test results. I am infertile. Tasia hid it to protect my pride. And you took advantage of the situation and forced me to raise someone else's child. Why did you do that? I loved you. I ruined my stable life for you, thinking I had found happiness. But it turns out I brought home an ungrateful person. I did everything for you, even kicked my ex-wife out of the house. But you didn't have the courage to admit that you betrayed me. How nice it would be if one day your lover appeared at your door and said, 'Son, I am your real father. Do you know how it feels to be deceived? Tell me, whose child is Romochka? At least do the right thing now. I have enough money to find out the truth, but don't expect forgiveness. Tell me now, this is your last chance, otherwise I will kick you and your child out of the house immediately. Don't hope for my pity. I lost everything when I betrayed Tasia." Aline, who had read the documents and understood that she couldn't escape the truth, decided to confess everything. "Yes, that's not your child. I don't love you. Are you satisfied?" "I don't want to see you and your son anymore," Boris said, his voice cold. Aline stepped back, finding him scary. "I'll leave now, but when I come back tomorrow morning, I don't want to see you in my house. It's not the child's fault that you're a terrible mother. So I'll give you some money to start with so you and the child can get along. That's all you can hope for. Thank God I'm not suing you for fraud. As far as I'm concerned, you're dead," Boris said, and walked out of the apartment, slamming the door behind him. In the nursery, Romas began to cry. Aline ran over, picked him up, and tried to comfort him. "Oh my God, I'm such an idiot," she sobbed. Everything was going so well, Boris didn't even suspect that this wasn't his child. Now what? Where am I going to go with my son? Back to my mother's house. I can't believe it's all gone like this. She comforted him, put him back in bed, and went back to the bedroom. Suddenly, the phone rang. Boris, she picked up the phone happily, but heard Margot's voice, a friend from high school. "Hello, what's up?" "I thought you were Boris." Boris, Margot laughed mockingly. "Did you have a fight with him?" "More than a fight," Aline sobbed. "He asked me to leave the house. I was desperate, not knowing where to go. But why did he do this to you? Your love is so beautiful, I was jealous. And the baby, you kept saying how much Boris loved it. Why did this happen?" "That's the problem," Aline cried harder. "He knew Romochka wasn't his, not his." Margot was surprised. "Then whose child is it?" "Wait, don't tell me it's Sergei's." "Oh my God, are you serious?" "What other choice did I have?" Aline said. "I was with Sergei for a long time, and then Boris came along. Do you think I could miss out on him? He's a rich man with a successful business. And Sergei, what would I get from him?" "Wait," Margot asked. "Are you saying you were seeing both of them at the same time?" "What's wrong with that?" Aline shrugged. "I loved Sergei, but I kept Boris as a backup. And when I got pregnant, I thought Sergei would be happy and we'd be together. He'd propose. And I was even ready to accept that he wasn't rich. We'd figure it out together. But he refused to take responsibility, saying he didn't want to be tied down. It was too late to have an abortion. And Boris, He talked a lot about wanting an heir, so I didn't hesitate to tell him about the baby. He believed. Sergei disappeared from my life, and I was completely focused on Boris. I didn't even have to convince him. He believed that it was my child. Of course he believed, because he had dreamed of having an heir for 10 years. For me, he divorced his wife and took back the company from her. Everything would have been fine if it weren't for his ex-wife, who decided to sue him for forgery. He's sterile, he can't have children. Damn it, Margot said. And now, did he really kick you out? He won't forgive me. Aline was silent for a moment, swallowing her tears. He asked me to leave the apartment. I don't know what to do now, where to go with Romochka. I hate Tasia. She ruined all my plans. Don't worry, Margot tried to comfort her. If Boris can't have children, why doesn't he adopt Romoka? Talk to him. Cry a little. Maybe it will work. After all, he needs an heir. And this is your chance. I don't know anymore, Aline replied, her voice full of regret. I was such a fool. How could I have made such a mistake? Stop crying, Margot said. Wait until tomorrow morning. You can seduce him. Wait for him to come home, put on some nice lingerie, and prepare a delicious meal. Do you want me to show you how to please a man? I'm sure you can win his attention back. Why do I have such bad luck? Aline complained. Sergei left me, and now Boris too. What's wrong with me? Don't worry, my dear. It's not over yet, Margot advised. You have to calm down. Men like fragile women who need protection. Trust me, I know that. Tasia returned home late at night. She parked her car and walked toward her apartment. As she approached, she slowed down, noticing Alexander sitting on the bench with a large bouquet of white roses beside him. What are you doing here? She asked as he stood up to greet her. I knew you would be sad after your talk with Boris, Alexander replied. So I came to cheer you up. He handed her the flowers. You are a wonderful woman, Tasia. I have always admired you. Your patience, kindness, and dignity are admirable. Alexander looked at her with affection. I have never met a woman like you. Thank you very much. Yes, you are right. I am really sad. Tasia sighed. You know, it was very difficult to end my relationship with Boris. After all, we were together for 10 years. But now I feel very relieved. I have escaped the darkness of the past, and fate has put everything in its place. Evil has been punished. Now I don't care about my ex-husband's new family, nor how he treats me. I'm glad my life has changed a lot in the past time, and I have no regrets. Because now, next to me is you. Tasia hugged Alexander tightly, and that means everything will be fine.